like to thank you all for turning up today. Not a very nice day, I know, but thank you very much indeed on that. Several years ago, during our research, we came across, may not be surprising to a lot of you, but we came across a number of individuals who over the centuries had either been born or lived in the borough and who made a name for themselves, either nationally or internationally. At the time, we seriously considered blue plaques, and unfortunately it fell on deaf ears, and then of course dear old COVID got in the way, didn't it? But fortunately, about 18 months ago, Graham Watts, who is a member of the Women's Commemoration Committee on providing blue plaques across the whole of Essex, depicting inspirational women. Well, naturally, we just jumped at the idea. We were more than willing to help. More than willing to help. However, saying that, it was a bit of a struggle to start with. A little bit of a struggle. Taken a little time. But then, with the help of Graham and the support of Basildon Council, we're here today, right, to unveil our first plaque. I say first plaque because we have another one that we'll be arranging hopefully sometime in the early summer. Not far from here, Netherden Hall, or Netherden Manor, people know it, for a Marion Wilberforce, who was Second World War Navy pilot. Again, unbelievable. More on that later. More on that later. All I'm going to say now is that we have a surprise. I'm not going to mention what the surprise is at this stage. I'm going to leave that to the Lord Lieutenant, which I invite her to stand up and say a few words, please. Thank you.
Ken, thank you very much indeed, and well done to Ken, because I know he puts a huge amount of effort into everything that brings these events to a climax. It's so nice to be here in Wickford. I haven't actually visited Wickford very much. I want to get to know Wickford better, and I know there's lots of work going on. I'm having various conversations with people who are involved with the Historical Society and keeping records. And learning about Hannah Lake just makes you open your eyes and realise just how many special things there are going on quietly behind the scenes and have gone on behind the scenes. And when we hear more about Hannah Lake, if you don't know already, I think you'll be amazed. I want to tell you just a little bit about the history of this group, actually, which has brought about the whole thing. In 2018, I received an email from Graham Watts asking whether I might be able to help with his ambition to get a blue plaque put up in Colchester to commemorate the life of Margaret Cavendish, an extraordinary woman, 17th century woman, a polymath, who amongst other things was a playwright, which is something close to Graham's heart. I didn't feel I'd been in the role as Lord Lieutenant very long and was not at all sure how I could help, but as the saying goes, I phoned a friend. In fact, I phoned 4 people, all of them deputy lieutenants with an interest in Essex history. Art historian and author Julia Abel-Smith, architectural historian James Bentley, who is here, museum director Roy Clare, over there, and the chairman of Essex Women's Advisory Group, Juliet Townsend, all deputy lieutenants. They joined up with Graham, and together they brought to the project a wide range of knowledge and expertise. So with my support and encouragement, this small, wonderful team has been working to identify suitable subjects for commemoration. Their intention is to celebrate and commemorate inspirational Essex women who may not have received the public recognition that they deserve. The criteria for selection are that the women are no longer living, are nationally acknowledged to have been preeminent in their fields, and would be a source of inspiration for the young women of Essex today. This is a vital part of this. There had been many blue plaques or similar memorials to men across Essex, but only a handful of women. But now I'm absolutely delighted to say that this omission is really beginning to be rectified. The project has gathered momentum over the last 2 years as part of Essex's contribution to Her Majesty the Queen's, the late Majesty the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in 2022. And Hannah Lake's plaque is going to represent the 26th plaque that we've unveiled, and the 3rd in March alone. The plaques are now all over Essex and in many disciplines. One occasion I unveiled 4 plaques in Newport, to the west of the county, all in one day. We've got women represented who were involved with the arts, science, medicine, nursing, horticulture, farming, philanthropy and activism, and a further 10 are already being planned, perhaps more. I would like you to suggest, if you don't subscribe to Essex Life magazine, that you might like to buy Essex Life magazine, because Graham is writing a regular column describing these women. How often are you doing that, Graham? Monthly. There you go. I'm terribly grateful to Hannah Gildart, who's the editor, who's shown a lot of interest in this. Now, I would now like to hand over to Graham, who will say a bit about Hannah Lake, but a little bit about Graham first of all. Graham has directed around 130 professional theatre productions, several short films, has worked in television theatres, and amongst which are the Royal Shakespeare Company, RADA, and the Mercury Theatre. There are many others actually, and he's worked on radio and film. He is well known for reviving lost classics, including a play by Margaret Cavendish, who I mentioned earlier, and for which he was nominated Best Director in the Off West End Theatre Awards. His online entry describes him as being always interested in projects, large and small, anywhere in the world. And that is Graham for you. Graham.
Thank you very much. I was born and brought up in Basildon. And 26 plaques later, this is the first one on my manor, as we say in this part of the world. So I'm really, really pleased about that. When I was growing up, you probably had the same, there was this kind of idea that Basildon has no history. It was kind of a big field where nothing happened. And then this big concrete spaceship called the Newtown sort of landed on it, a load of EastEnders got out, and this is where we are. And anything sort of pre-1949 doesn't exist. Well, thanks to Ken, mainly, we know that that's not true. One of the things that we probably did know about was about the Pilgrim Fathers and their relationship to this particular part of the world. Supposedly, before the Mayflower sailed, there was a meeting in Billericay High Street between them, and we know for a fact that the Mayflower itself was fitted out in Leigh-on-Sea. So there is that connection. You also know around the borough, there's, for example, there's the Christopher Martin Road, isn't there, which is named after Christopher Martin. There's Mayflower School, and until very recently there was the Mayflower Pub, which for Puritans is highly inappropriate at that particular time. So there's that relationship already. Now, the Mayflower set sail in 1620, and coincidentally, that was the year that Hannah Lake was born here in Wickford. She was baptised at All Saints Church. I don't know if you know the church, is quite a way away from here actually. It's in North Benfleet is what they call it, but it's at the end of Burnt Mills Road and Pound Lane. That church that's on the hill there, that's where she was baptised. And in 1635, she left on a ship called the Abigail to go to what was then called the New World. When she was there, she met somebody called John Gallop, who she married. And you probably know the name Gallop from Gallop poles and things like that. Well, that's exactly the same family. And then is where our story begins, really, because she started a dynasty, as they say in America, of incredibly famous people. So much such that I've had to write them down because there's so many. I think it says on the plaque that there's 3 presidents and 2 first ladies. So the president's Coolidge, he was president number 30, the 2 Bush presidencies, 41 and 43, and oddly enough, one of her descendants is John Hinckley, the man who shot a president. If you remember when Ronald Reagan was shot, that's another descendant. First ladies, Lucretia Garfield, president number 20, and Jane Pierce, president number 14. There's too many governors to explain because there's loads of them related to the family. But currently, John Kerry, you know John Kerry, the former Secretary of State, he's a descendant, and Pete Buttigieg, the Transport Secretary, currently in the Biden administration, another descendant. General Douglas MacArthur, actresses Carol Lombard, James Spader, Margot Kidder, Alec Baldwin, and David Hyde Pierce, if you remember him from Frazier's brother, another descendant. And in the world of literature, there's playwrights Tennessee Williams and the poets Emily Dickinson and Robert Frost, all descended from that one woman from Wickford. Now, because of the literary connection, we thought that actually a library is probably a good place to put this blue plaque. And we went just across there and we saw a nice big blank wall where we could put the plaque. And we went inside to speak to the librarian in there to see what the possibility would be about putting the plaque out there. And we got chatting, and I noticed that she's American, because I'm sharp like that. And I said, that's funny, because the lady said about it's from America. Well, it turns out, of course, that working in Wickford Library 400 years after she was born, Hannah Lake was born, is one of her descendants. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce, 400 years later, Sarah Weeks-Jones, who's part of the family.
Thank you very much. Yes, so genealogy is something that's very close to my heart. I spend most of my free time doing that. And so I've kind of always known about my connection to the Winthrop family because my great-great-grandfather was an amateur genealogist who spent summers at the New England Historical Society. Was very proud of some of his early American ancestors. Got a couple of Mayflower ancestors, all of that good stuff. Turns out it's more of a family vine sometimes because there weren't a lot of other people to marry, but that is kind of how my connection to Hannah Lake comes into it. I'm actually a descendant of the Winthrops on 2 lines. That was fun to find out. But she came to, it's one of those things, lots of Winthrops. They all ended up in Ohio eventually. But yeah, so when they came in and said about this, I said, oh, I'm connected to the Winthrops. And they said, oh yeah, so is she. Looked it up, turns out she was already in my family tree. So, and I like to find those connections to the Bushes. Turns out we're cousins like 8 times. So, obviously I need an invitation to the family summer vacation. But to some, my link to Hannah might seem a bit tenuous. But as someone who has left her family and friends to move across the Atlantic Ocean, albeit with a bit more ease, less ship, more plane, I know that the people you surround yourself with in your new life really do become your family. So the fact that I may not share a ton of genetics with her doesn't mean as much as the fact that their families, my ancestors and Hannah, and all of their descendants are all mentioned as living together, having experiences together, founding a new world together. As I said, it's a strange and powerful thing, genealogy. What you find lurking in your branches might surprise you, such as me working in the same town as Hannah Lake lived 400 years later and getting a blue plaque put on the wall. But as an American, the legacy of my European ancestors can be complicated. On the one hand, they are complicit in colonialism, slavery, and the genocide of indigenous people, and I have to accept that aspect of my heritage, but they were also a fiercely determined and brave people who believed in something so strongly that they were willing to risk literally everything, their lives, the lives of their family, and even their place in the society in which they were born, just at the chance of a better life in an unfamiliar land. Someone in every single branch of my family made that sacrifice, took that chance, and it worked out for them, but for a lot of people it didn't. So it's great that people like Hannah Lake and my Winthrop ancestors were able to survive and to shape our modern world and leave us a legacy which still inspires Americans and people around the globe. So I'm very honored to be just a small part of Basildon Heritage's commitment to recognizing the inspiring women of the borough, and very, very pleased to welcome Hannah to Wickford Library. So, thank you. My apologies, I've actually got a poem to read as well. All right, this is by another one of Hannah's relatives that we mentioned, and it's called The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Two roads diverged in the yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though, as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept that first for another day. Yet, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in the wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
We're going to go round, if you don't mind, to where the plaque is. You go out here, turn right, just follow around. Just outside though, there's a pub. Be careful, I've already been in it. So just watch the pub. So if you don't mind, the Lord Lieutenant will come round and we'll unveil the plaque round there. Thank you. And then we're coming back out to here afterwards, right? Or tea, biscuits or whatever. And I must say, I thank you